how to use IUL for IRA, 401k, qualified plan strategic rollouts. So this episode is going to talk about strategic rollouts. It's not a rollover. A rollover is like going from the frying pan into the fire, so to speak. Rollovers are what most people hear when they're told, hey, take the money in your 401ks, roll that money over to an IRA and keep deferring, postponing, procrastinating until you're age 72 if you don't need the money. And then take RMDs, required minimum distributions, thinking you're saving tax. That is the worst advice for most Americans. It's not saving tax, it's actually compounding, increasing the tax. They might be paying the least amount of tax in each given year, but when it's strung out over their life expectancies, they're shocked with how much tax they ended up paying. Instead, you should do a strategic rollout. Get the money out of those IRAs or 401ks strategically, usually in 5 years, and get the taxes over and done with sooner than later and reposition it into something that's going to be tax-free from now on, a properly structured IUL. Get ready. You're going to be blown away with what I showed you. So I'm Doug Andrew, and what do I know? Well, I've been a financial strategist and retirement planning specialist now for 5 decades, helping thousands of people optimize assets, minimize taxes, and empower what I call their authentic wealth. But I've helped many people prepare for a comfortable retirement, to not outlive their money, and eliminate the dangers of taxes, inflation, and market volatility on their hard-earned and saved money. And most Americans have way too much money in yet-to-be-taxed IRAs and 401ks invested in the market. So let me show you why I usually recommend a strategic rollout and why it's wise to do this. So as we look at this strategy and we want to help people optimize those assets, what we're wanting to do is use tax-efficient strategies, wealth transfer strategies, okay? And this is why we train IUL agents how to become sophisticated retirement planning specialists by doing this. Now, in my book, The Laser Fund, which is flying off of our warehouse shelves, and stay with me to the end of this episode, I'll gift you a free copy of this. On Amazon, you're going to pay $20 to $70 for it, and I'll gift you a copy free if you'll just contribute towards the shipping, okay? So in the last chapter of the left brain side of the book, because this is actually 2 books in one, this is the left brain side, this is the right brain side, the stories. Now, in the 14th chapter, I talk about the 4 categories or resources that a lot of Americans may draw retirement income from. Not everybody does from all 4, but the biggest one is investment income. This is usually money in IRAs or 401ks. A lot of people own real estate, thinking, oh, I'm going to get rental income and so forth, but then they end up regretting that because they don't like being a landlord in their older years. Taking out trash and fixing toilets, evicting tenants. Some like doing that, but most don't. Then you have the guaranteed income people. These are those who like guarantees. They're not so worried about being rich. They just don't want to be poor. And so they're fine with just having a guaranteed income out of a pension or Social Security, maybe in an annuity, okay? This is the most underutilized, and this is the tax-free category. It's the least understood and the most impactful. And this is where I recommend people have 40 to 60% of their income. So let's dive a little bit deeper. The purple bucket, where I think most Americans are way too top heavy. They have way too much money in this one when they retire. And at retirement planning is totally different than what you did for retirement. But it's in money trapped, in my opinion, and yet to be taxed IRAs or 401ks invested in the market. And Wall Street was not designed to create predictable income. That's why we have in the financial services industry a pathetic 4% rule. They only want you to pull out 4%, $1 million. They only want you to pull out 40,000, and then you have to pay tax on that. Even in a 25% bracket, you're only netting 3% or 30,000. That's pathetic. And so I have to get people to consider getting money out of this purple bucket down to the green bucket. I'll come back to that. Some people own real estate, but like I said, some are sick and tired of being landlords. And yet they feel stuck because they've been doing 1031 exchanges, deferring, and they're gonna have to pay a huge capital gain tax. But now they're realizing tax revenuers are proposing doing away with those 1031 exchanges and the step up in basis on long-term capital gains and all kinds of things because they're hard up for tax dollars. And so many times I show them just by biting the bullet, selling the real estate, paying the 20% capital gain tax, and taking the net and putting it into an IUL, and they're shocked when the income out of the IUL is not only equal to, but oftentimes greater than the income they were getting out of their properties, and they don't have to be a landlord anymore. They're surprised, okay? Some people like the guaranteed income based on risk tolerance. The most underutilized, my favorite is the green bucket. You might have Roths in there, you might have municipal bonds, but my favorite is a max-funded tax advantage insurance contract. If it's structured correctly and funded properly, an IUL is deemed a laser fund, okay? And so it knocks the socks off of a Roth, okay? Roths only have two basic advantages. IUL has those two advantages and four additional advantages that Roths will never have. So I will never own an IRA 401k up here, and I will never own a Roth. And I never have, because I can have all the benefits of a Roth and a whole bunch more with my money in an IUL. And I explained that in other episodes on this channel. And so this is my favorite bucket. It requires most of my clients do a strategic rollout from the purple bucket down to the green bucket. But I would recommend at retirement that no more than 30% of a person's income is coming out of the purple bucket. And once people read my book, they don't want any of their money left in that bucket. I would recommend that no more than 30% of your income should be reliant upon your real estate, because real estate goes through volatility. I would recommend, based on risk tolerance, that 0 to up to 80% of your income could be guaranteed income. But this one down here, I recommend that 40 to 60% of your retirement income be totally tax-free. What does that mean? The IRS will know you're receiving it, but it doesn't show up anywhere on your 1040 tax return. It's totally tax-free. It's that simple, okay? And money out of an IUL does not show up on your 1040 tax return unless you take it out the stupid way. I explain how to do it the smart way in my book. So looking at this, in my book, The Laser Fund, I give some hypothetical examples so that people will get it. Probably my favorite is Mr. Tax to the Max versus Mrs. I Have a Lot More. And in this example, Tax to the Max follows the herd, and he listens to CNBC, and he doesn't need the money at age 59 and a half when he can avoid the 10% penalty, and he gets convinced to keep deferring and deferring till he's age 72. And then he's convinced to take RMDs, thinking he's saving tax. No, he's compounding the tax. I developed software years ago that would show people the darkness of the night, so to speak, if they did that. And if they took RMDs from age 72 out to their life expectancy, their spouse's life expectancy, and then down to their children who inherit it, and they have to get it out now in 10 years. They can't keep it to their life expectancy. People are flabbergasted when they see how much tax they end up paying. It's usually, conservatively, as they will pay in tax by stringing it out as much as they have in their accounts at age 60, 65, or 70. They're going to pay that much in tax by continuing to postpone. And then I show them Mrs. I Have a Lot More, who does a strategic rollout over 5 years and pays way less tax and ends up with double the income. And we do this all the time. It's really a conservative example. I also have another one in my book called The Smiths versus the Jones. Same scenario. I end up getting the money out of their IRAs or 401ks with no tax over a 10-year period by resurrecting deductions that they had been killing on their real estate. But we double the net spendable income. And they have much greater liquidity, safety, rate of return. We've optimized their assets. So those are hypothetical stories that you can read in the book that I want to gift you. And there's articles. I used to write newspaper articles showing the difference between Tax to the Max versus Mrs. I Have a Lot More. And people would just fill up my seminars to come and learn how this could apply in their particular set of circumstances. But then in my book, I do talk about the strategy, and I give real life stories. So in a nutshell, a strategic rollout is up to a three-part strategy. You don't have to do all three. The first step is you strategically reposition your retirement monies, IRAs, 401ks, and so forth, over 5, maybe 10 years, subjecting that money to tax, getting the taxes over and done with sooner than later. They're showing up on the front page of your 1040 tax return. But you're making an assumption that your current tax bracket is likely the lowest bracket you will ever be in. And most Americans are coming to that realization. And number two assumption is that money will never be worth more than it is today because of inflation. So it'd be better to pay taxes on today's dollars than tomorrow's dollars and enjoy tax-free money down the road. And so once you understand that, you do a strategic rollout analysis, and that determines the bucket size of the IUL. Now, the second part of this is you're going to reposition the after-tax money as you're rolling it out, and you're going to put that into an IUL. So if you have somebody that has $300,000 and yet to be taxed IRAs or 401ks, and they're in a 33% bracket, if they pull out $300,000, they're going to net $200,000. You put $200,000 into the IRAs or 401ks, and it will generate more income than the after-tax money you take out of an IRA or 401k. Is this making sense? Or sometimes savvy people, I had a guy that had $500,000. He was in a 40% bracket. He pulled out $500,000 in one fell swoop, paid $200,000 in tax and put the net of $300,000 into an insurance policy, but he didn't need it. So he wanted to maximize what he left behind, so he ended up with a $1.5 million death benefit. Now when he dies, he leaves behind $1.5 million tax-free instead of $300,000 after tax in an IRA or 401k. He 5 times what he was going to leave behind. Does that make sense? Or other examples that I'll go through here in just a moment. Now, the third strategy is if you can offset some or all of the tax you pay during the rollout by creating or resurrecting deductions that maybe you killed, that's icing on the cake. And many times I have done this. And those are the stories like the Smiths and the Jones, but I'll show you an actual example of this here in just a moment. So the real stories that I give in the book, a couple of school teachers, husband and wife, a real estate landlord, a husband and wife that were both physicians. We saved them $1.2 million. A couple in California we took from the highest tax bracket to a 0% tax bracket in 5 years. So let me give you just a little bit more detail, one by one. The husband and wife, both school teachers, came to me, and they had $250,000 there at age 59 and a half, accumulated in their 401ks and 403bs. This was years ago. And their advisor had been telling them, well, you don't need the money, so keep deferring until you're age 70 and a half. Back then, you had to start taking RMDs at age 70 and a half. Now it's age 72. So I gave them an illustration if they did that. If they took that $250,000 and they kept earning a rate of return of 7.2%, it would double to $500,000. And if they took out RMDs throughout the husband's life expectancy, the wife's life expectancy, and down to their kids, they were shocked. At a minimum, they would pay $250,000 in tax. They said, we're going to end up paying as much in tax as we have saved so far? $250,000? I said, yep. In a nutshell, I said, if we did a strategic rollout in the next 5 years, we pull out $60,000 a year, and in 5 years, you're going to be earning some money while you're going. So we're going to get $300,000 instead of $250,000 out of there. But you're only going to pay $12,500 a year in tax times 5 years. You're only going to pay $60,000 in tax instead of having to pay $250,000. Would you like to do that? Yeah, that sounds like a no-brainer, but we hate paying tax any sooner than we have to. I said, you're going to pay, okay, you're going to pay $60,000 now, or you're going to wait and pay $250,000 later. It's like the old Fram and Auto Light commercial where an automobile mechanic would hold up an oil filter and say, you can pay me now, and I'll change your oil filter. You can wait and pay me later, and I'll replace your engine. And they finally got it, okay? And so I saved them $250,000 of unnecessary tax because we actually resurrected deductions on their rental properties that allowed them to get the money out with no tax. And so I saved them $250,000 of unnecessary tax. They didn't even have to pay $60,000. We reduced it down to 20, down to 0. The story's in the book. You're going to be blown away. The next story in the book is the real estate landlord, and he came to me at age 70 and a half, and he had $600,000 in his IRAs or 401ks. Now, this was in 2012. That $600,000 is what he had in the year 2000. And he saw that $600,000 in the market go down to $360,000 twice, in 2001 to 2003 after the 9/11 terrorist attacks, and again in 2008. And it was barely back to break even. And he's still going back to that advisor, where he didn't make anything in 12 years. The advisor just kept saying, hang in there, the market always comes back. And the advisor says, okay, now you're back to the $600,000, just take RMDs, required minimum distributions. Well, on $600,000 at his life expectancy, that was $24,000 a year. In a 33% tax bracket, he had to pay $8,000 every year in tax on that $24,000. He was netting $16,000 after tax on his IRAs and 401ks to buy gas and groceries, prescriptions, and golf green fees. Now, even though he didn't need the money, that's pathetic, okay? That was the 4% rule. We rolled the money out over a 5-year period. We got the $600,000 out, and while we were getting it out of there, we grew it to $750,000. So he rolled out $150,000 a year times 5 years. We rolled out $750,000 because we were managing his money way better than his advisor. Now, simply, he saw that if he pulled out $150,000 a year for 5 years, he pulls out $100,000 in a 33% tax bracket. He's paying $50,000 in tax. He's only netting $100,000 to put into his IUL bucket. So far, so good. So a net of $100,000 a year for 5 years. He gets $500,000 in his IUL bucket, and he knew he could earn at least 8%. What's 8% on $500,000 in the IUL? $40,000 a year. He could take out $40,000 a year tax-free compared to $16,000 after tax. It was a no-brainer. He actually earned 10%. 10% would be $50,000. How much more is $50,000 than $16,000? Well, he also owned a whole bunch of rental properties, rental homes, and he refinanced 4 of them and resurrected tax deductions. He pulled out the equity in those rental properties, put it into the IUL, and he was earning more than double the net cost of the mortgage. He was making money hand over fist, but the strategic byproduct that came along for the ride is we resurrected deductions that he had killed by paying down the mortgages, and that offset the entire $50,000 a year in tax. And so we actually got out $150,000 a year tax-free for 5 years. We got $750,000 out of his IRAs or 401ks tax-free. That $750,000 in the IUL is generating $75,000 a year of tax-free income, compared to where if he left it in his IRAs, he was experiencing $16,000 a year. What would you rather have, $16,000 a year or $75,000? We do this all the time. The next example, husband and wife physicians, they came to us with $4.6 million in their IRAs or 401ks. Their advisor said, well, yeah, they're going to pay a lot of tax, but they can afford it. I did an illustration. You're going to pay $2.6 million at least in taxes if you take this advisor's advice, postpone till 72 and take RMDs. They were flabbergasted, $2.6 million, and the advisor just goes, well, they can afford $2.6 million. I said, well, let's ask them. I said, I can't save you $2.6 million. You've painted yourself into a tax trap here, but I could save you about $1.2 million. Do you want to do that? Absolutely. I saved them $1.2 million of unnecessary tax. That otherwise payable tax went into an IUL. That $1.2 million has been generating $100,000 a year of tax-free income for them. They don't need, it's using it for vacations, their kids, their grandkids, college, military, religious missions, all kinds of things, instead of that money going down the drain in unnecessary tax. They loved the strategic rollout. The last example is we took a couple in California from the highest tax bracket they were in was 40%, down to a 0% tax bracket in 5 years. When they came to us, they had $6 million in IRAs and 401ks. Again, their advisor was saying, postpone, defer, take RMDs when you get to be age 72. Instead, they saw the light. They bit the bullet. They paid $2 million in 5 years in tax on the $6 million. They netted $4 million after tax. $4 million was $800,000 a year into their IUL. They ended up putting in $4 million in 4 years and 1 day. That $4 million doubled to $8 million in another 7.5 years when they finally retired. They now have $8 million tax-free, and it's generating $600,000 to $800,000 a year of growth. They only need $300,000 a year to live on, but they pull out $300,000 a year, and it's not showing up anywhere on their 1040 tax return. They're in a 0% tax bracket. The IRS knows they're receiving it, and they know it's tax-free. One last example. We had a couple come to us with $2.6 million saved in their IRAs or 401ks. They were proud, and I said, way to go. But on that $2.6 million, they were going to take 6% a year. And so 6% on that was going to generate $160,000 a year of income. And they had another $40,000 coming from, the school teacher pension or Social Security. I can't remember which. They were excited to have $200,000 a year of income. And I said, well, I see a big problem. Well, what is it? Well, that $200,000 all showing up on the front page of your 1040 tax return the rest of your life. They said, you mean there's another way? And I said, yeah. Where have you been? I said, I've been here all along. You've sort of had blinders on because you were too busy making the money. So let's do a strategic rollout. You're going to pay $54,000 or more a year in tax the rest of your life. You're only netting $146,000 after tax right now. So in 5 years, we did a strategic rollout for 60% of that. We took $120,000 of that $200,000 of income off of their 1040 tax return. The IRS knows they're still receiving it, but they know it's tax-free. It's an IUL, okay? Now, they're actually getting more than $200,000 a year of income because we're managing their money way better. But let's just use apples to apples. On the same $200,000 of income, they only have to pay $21,600 in tax. They're netting more money. We saved them $32,400, and now because their tax bracket would be higher, out to life expectancy, we have saved them between $800,000 to $1 million. We do this all the time. And so this is called a strategic rollout. If you want to learn more and see examples, I would recommend you claim a free copy of my book, The Laser Fund. It's been flying off of our warehouse shelves. You can pay $20 to $70 for it on Amazon. If you do that, thank you, but I'll gift you a copy free. Simply click on the link below or go to laserfund.com and you contribute a nominal amount towards the shipping and handling. I require a little bit of skin in the game. I'll cover the rest of that and I'll pay for the book. I will fire out a hard copy of this book to you via priority mail. Now, it's actually 2 books in one. This side is 200 pages, 14 chapters with all the charts and graphs if you're a left brain learner. If you're a right brain learner and you learn more by stories and examples, you flip it over and read this one. About 100 pages, 12 chapters with 62 actual client stories. If you want to use both the left brain and the right brain, your whole brain, read both of these books. But when you're in there claiming your free copy, if you like to listen and learn and watch and learn, there's audio and video formats. There's even an 18-hour masterclass that you can invest in. That's what our affluent clients invest in because they know more about this than 99% of insurance agents do. They're educated when they come to us. And so that's why they want IUL that will accommodate, $12 million, $50 million, $100 million. Getting back to you, if you're a member of the public and you want to make sure whoever you talk to knows what they're doing, while you're in there claiming your free copy, you can schedule a free consultation, no cost, no obligation, with a certified IUL professional. These are the top 0.1% of IUL agents who know they have passed a stringent exam, and I know that they know how to do it right. You're going to want to make sure it's done right. And so you can do that no cost or obligation. If you are an agent and you want to learn how to become certified, then click on the link and you can go to IULinsiders.com and it will show you how you can go through the certification process, which is not easy, but it's worth it. This is about you, whether you are a client that wants to optimize assets and not outlive your money, or whether you're a professional and you want to actually be a professional.